Ships! We're just going to start off and get to the point. Weird ships. There are many kinds of ships out there, but occasionally you will see ones that stand out from the past, and you would be like, what the hell were the engineers thinking? Over the years, from researching ships from trampers to barges and ocean liners to cruise ships, there is without a doubt a ton of underappreciated ships that a number of ship enthusiasts, like myself, don't exactly look over. So, as your standard privileged white American with an unhealthy appeal towards machines, I figured I'd take the opportunity to talk about some of the weirdest ships I've come across over the 15 years of researching ships out of pure boredom. I must note that this list is not a top 10 video, we've got enough of those on the platform already, and there is no order to rank them in terms of looks. This is simply being listed for fun. Number 1. The Argonaut. Starting off, we have the Argonaut, a submarine with wheels. She was built in 1898 with the intent of basically being a mobile diving chamber, or for simpletons, an underwater car, with the intent of being for plundering, exploring, and salvaging for divers aboard. She was also powered by gasoline, but because gasoline produces exhaust, the sub had a skinny exhaust tag that had to stick out like a snorkel to prevent CO2 poisoning. This, of course, limited how far the Argonaut could go down, and how far out the sea it could go. Did I mention she also had big wheels of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese to drive? Number 2. USS Alarm. Ever wondered what the love child of Nigel Thornberry in a steamboat looked like? But look no further than the USS Alarm, an experimental torpedo boat built in 1873. This pointy donkey was made 8 years after the American Civil War had ended, and she also had a number of interesting features like no other, to my knowledge at least. She was fitted with one heavy gun on her bow, spar torpedoes, and you may have a hard time seeing, but if you look closely, you can see her massive ram! But that's not all. No. This railroad-chinned motherfucker also had a propeller like no other, called the Mallory steering propeller, also called the Fowler wheel propeller. It functioned as both a propeller and a rudder to steer the ship. She never served in battle, and is presumably scrapped given she was sold. Rest in peace. Number 3. The SS Connector. Inspired off of the couplings of railway cars, the SS Connector was a ship with an articulated hull, built to sail in rough seas and bend in flights of the waves. However, the hinges holding her together were the equivalent to the hinges you would see on your kitchen cabinet, believe it or not, and were open to constant wear and tear and possibly cause the entire ship to flex apart. Also, one of the ideas of her was that she could sail into a port with one of her sections carrying a payload, and have that section of the hull uncoupled, and be able to reattach with another section of her hull. If that makes any sense. The scary thing is that this ship did exist, but she functioned so poorly that she was scrapped immediately after the sea trials. I wonder why. A note to self, don't make your ship out of doorway hinges. Number 4. Cleopatra. In London lies an obelisk, or well, a couple of obelisks titled Cleopatra's Needles. They were a gift offered to the British in 1819, but the offer was kindly declined because the British government didn't want to fund transporting it overseas. The obelisk remained in Alexandria until 1877, when the transportation was finally sponsored and paid off for by Sir William James Erasmus Wilson. What a name. The obelisk was covered in a metal cylinder and then fitted with a pilot house, a sail, a rudder, and a steering gear, practically turning the whole thing into a barge, or what I would like to call it, a floating Pringles can. The vessel was appropriately named the Cleopatra, and was towed all the way from Egypt to London by the vessel Olga, and later the Anglia, since during the transportation, the crew of both Cleopatra and the Olga cut the tow line to prevent the Olga from going down with the Cleopatra in rough weather, along with its payload. This incident killed 6 people during attempts when some volunteers got into a smaller vessel to help rescue the 5 people on board the Cleopatra. Eventually, the Cleopatra was found 5 days later by the Anglia and towed to London, where the barge itself was scrapped on site and the obelisk were taken out and hoisted up intact where it remains today. Farewell, the floating Pringles can, Cleopatra. Number 5. Novgorod. This one may seem like a low-hanging fruit to other ship enthusiasts who are watching, but I have to say that the Novgorod was one of the oddest ships out there. She was built for the Imperial Russian Navy in the 1870s and served as a coast defense ironclad monitor. What makes her unique is her strange, delicious pancake or cookie-like appearance, sporting a low profile, 2 tall funnels that are parallel to both sides of the hull, and the fact she was powered by 6 propellers, which were later cut down to 4. There are rumors about how she functioned, claiming that she spun around like a top from the recoil of her cannons. And while the idea of that seems funny, that did not actually happen. She was amazingly stable. However, her hull's shape produced a lot of drag, which meant that she was rather sluggish, but she did her job well. Not to mention, 2 other ships with similar traits were made, those being the Popov and the Kambala. Unfortunately, all 3 were retired and scrapped. Farewell, Novgorod, and the other 2. Number 6. ERNEST BAZIN. So originally, I planned to talk about the K-class submarines for this list, but the ERNEST BAZIN, built in 1897, took its place as this vessel is not talked about at all. So if you wanted to learn about the K-class submarines, well, here's a picture, the script, a funny story, and my remorse. Anyway, the ERNEST BAZIN looks like it clawed its way out of the doohickey convention. The design of the ERNEST BAZIN is certainly a strange one. She had a small hull that would raise out of the water to reveal 6 large discs that would have spun around and thrusted the ship forward once the main hull was lifted out of the water to produce more speed and less drag like a hydrofoil. While the ship was built, she was in no means a success. Sometime in 1897, the BAZIN started a test run attempting to cross the English Channel, but when the ship's disc began to turn, they would soon draw up so much water that the water acted as more as a set of brakes, and causing the ship to move significantly slower than anticipated. The ship's inventor, ERNEST BAZIN, saw these problems, and had later found all the issues and claims to have fixed them in a newer design, and even proposed a full-on ocean liner that would have had 8 discs instead of 6. Sadly, ERNEST BAZIN passed away, and all the plans and the ship itself were unfortunately scrapped. Farewell, ERNEST BAZIN! Well, that does it for this video. I hope you guys won't mind this sort of new content thing I'm working on. This is usually not the sort of content I usually do, but I figured I'd do something different for the channel, and hopefully open up a bigger audience. I don't know how to end this off, so I'm gonna let y'all go do your thing. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to, comment, and yeah, good night.